Powered by Go-Goat Sports and in partnership with TSN. This is Season 3, Episode 17 of the Ray Dregs Hockey Podcast. We've got Luc Robitaille of the Los Angeles Kings joining us as our guest here in Episode 17. Lots to chew on in headlines, Ray, which we'll get to momentarily. But, you know, I've lived in Ontario since 1998. So I love the weather because, I mean, kind of similar to Vancouver, I guess, minus the rain. We get our share of rain, but not like that. Yeah. But you do get to experience extended seasons, right? And we're spoiled in Southern Ontario, especially because you don't see a flake of snow until the new year. And man, right. We got walloped on Sunday night. And I was joking. I was talking to a buddy and I'm looking at my snowblower in my pimped out garage. And it pisses me off to have my snowblower in my garage because, you know, I've got the floors epoxied. I've got a big screen TV. I've got pot lights. I mean, it is a beautiful man cave. And I'm looking at this.
How much does an insider make?
Yeah, well, when I sold my other house, that was priority one. I said, look, to Holly, you can do whatever you want in the house. It's a 3-car garage. It's going to be built the way I want it to be. It's awesome.
So do you have a golf hitting bay in there yet?
I don't. And I've got Mike Keenan's old 1985 convertible Mercedes sitting in the bay that would be a simulator. So
okay, so because if you get one, would you be able to take a full swing in there?
Yeah, you could. Yeah.
Okay, so it wouldn't be like Duffy who put a simulator in his basement and he can only hit a wedge, otherwise he keeps hitting the roof. You wouldn't be that stupid, right?
No, I think I've got like 11 or 12 foot ceilings minimum in there. So anyway, I'm making fun of the snowblower on Sunday afternoon, and the weather warning is out there, right? Excuse me.
Right.
You know, it's, be prepared. Heavy snowfall warning. It's coming.
Right. You're like,
yeah, sure. I grew up in the prairies, but we're going to get an inch of snow. Big deal. We woke up Monday morning and it was comical, the amount of snow that fell. It was like it just went.
Well, I saw Andy Petrillo went to take his dog for a walk, and she put a dog in the snow, and the poor guy just disappeared. I'm like, oh man, how deep is that? Like, and it's crazy because you're ready for it, and you're from the prairies, and you've had bad weather and all that stuff. Yeah. But when it hits, oh my God, like it's like you can't even believe it, right?
No, you can't. And so I'm going to call it the Good Samaritan opportunity for me and my neighbor across the street, Phil. So clearly we were sort of prepared because we have snowblowers. So, I mean, that's 2/3 of the battle. I wasn't sure mine was going to start. So I gassed it up. It started, out we go. I've got I would say a driveway similar to yours. So it's not a small driveway. It's, excuse me, something that, hold on.
Coffee this morning, eh?
Yeah, no. And then I followed it up with hot water and lemon juice. So my throat is irritated today. Yeah, anyway, decent sized driveway. Finish my driveway. I look across. I've got an elderly neighbor. Great guy. He's a Habs fan, but we won't hold that against him. Always wants to talk hockey, but he's had some health issues. So obviously I'm going to do his driveway. Get there. Phil, my other neighbor, is helping me. So we clear that. Well, then the other guy beside him comes out. Well, we got to help him. 6 neighbors later,
Well, good for you though, Dregs.
Buddy, it took 4 hours. And I was so... Like, I actually feel pretty good today, but I walked in, I looked at Holly, I started at 8:30 in the morning, came back in at about 12:30, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be bad tomorrow. And I actually feel not too bad. So, anyway.
We had one of those snowstorms when I was playing for the Rangers. I mean, like, it never snows like that. I was up by the practice rink, and they canceled the game. And, like, I couldn't even get out of the driveway, and so I'm shoveling the driveway. And this Good Samaritan guy pulls up. He's got a plow on the front of his like a SUV, but not a big one, but a SUV. He's got a plow on it, and he stops. He's like, "Hey, buddy, you want me to plow your driveway?" I was like, "Geez, yeah, it'd be awesome." He goes, $200. I'm like, "Beat it." And he goes, "What?" I go, "Beat it." Go find somebody else. $200.
That's a while ago too, man. Like even now.
In the 90s.
Oh, like, that's outrageous.
What a donkey. Go drive your truck around and, anyway.
One of the neighbor kids walked by, and we'll wrap this up, but one of the neighbor kids walks by. He's probably 12, 13. And I'm like, seriously? He's got his sled over his shoulder. He's going tobogganing. I'm like, buddy, you'd make $100 an hour if you just grabbed a shovel and went door by door. He goes, nah, there's too much snow.
Yeah, I'll wait for it to melt a bit.
We've spoiled our kids. Headlines, Ray, presented by our friends at Boston Pizza. Again, we talk about this every week. The great menu selection at Boston Pizza. Now over 50 items. 50 different items. So even if you have a picky family, our family isn't so picky. I don't think yours is that picky. But regardless, we've got it covered at Boston Pizza.
You're going to get it. You're going to find something. Cammie's not eating a lot of pizza. She'll find something there. Yeah. The other three of us,
whatever
pizza by the bucket. Love it.
Well, and the good thing is, obviously, we just talked about the huge snowfall here in Ontario. We're dealing with all the restrictions province by province because of the pandemic. So you can order ahead, you can pick it up, or you can get delivered right to your front door. So let's let Boston Pizza do the cooking tonight. Big news out of Montreal when we got up this morning, and that is Jeff Gorton, the overseer of all things hockey operations related in Montreal, has hired his old buddy Kent Hughes, like a highly recognized agent. Patrice Bergeron, Chris Letang. I mean, there are a number of clients that would be on the list of Kent Hughes, hired as general manager of the Montreal Canadiens. And just a bit of a backstory before we get your reaction to it. Look, Kent was the first candidate that Gorton went to. And I think that they would have had conversations of hiring back in the New York Rangers days when Gorton was there. Maybe wanted to bring Kent in as an assistant GM, something along those lines. And it just didn't make sense for a number of different reasons. Kent has two young hockey players who one's an NHL draft pick. The other one is a prospect who could get drafted this summer. So he was busy at the time. And when this process in Montreal started, Kent was reluctant. He flat out said, look, Gortz, go through your process, interview all the people you're going to interview. If you don't get the feel that you need from a candidate, then maybe let's circle back at the conclusion of your process, and I'll have had time to think about it. That's what happened. And now Kent Hughes is the general manager of the Montreal Canadiens. So what are your thoughts on a player agent? One more time, shifting from being a player agent to an NHL GM.
Well, you say there's a lot of reasons why an agent won't shift, or Kent didn't before. A lot of it's financial. I mean, you got 15 high-name clients, and you're making 2 to 3% of salary, and it doesn't take long for it to go, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't make financial sense. The opportunity to run a team would be really attractive for a lot of these guys to run the Montreal Canadiens, a place where you grew up, would be doubly attractive. Now, here's the thing I thought of when Kent's name was circulating the first time, as Jeff Gorton started to interview a bunch of different guys and ladies, is there is going to be a new management structure in Montreal. One of the things an agent would be able to bring, I would assume, is a pretty collaborative effort. Agents do not negotiate a contract by themselves. No. They have people that do research. They put the number side together. They put the hockey side together. They start to come together for a more concerted, concentrated approach to the player's contract. And so I see a management structure with Kent Hughes as the general manager, and perhaps 2 or 3 assistant general managers, all doing something a little bit different into a collaborative process. So I don't, is Kent the right guy? Sure. Why not? Like anybody that gets hired you would think has the chops to do the job well. What's interesting to me is we hear a lot about, recycled candidates and old candidates, and this is new.
It is. Yeah.
It is new and it's different. And so I think we have to see what the rest of the structure is. Today's Tuesday, I think, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. And Tuesday. He's going to speak Wednesday. And so I'm assuming they'll outline what their structure will look like in some way, shape, or form. I'm really excited to see what it'll look like with Kent at the top of the chain. I
agree.
And it is important.
Yeah.
He does speak French.
Mm-hmm.
I do
grew
think
up in the Montreal area.
Yeah, but I think there's lots of times when you say, when the discussion has been, oh, well, if the general manager is only out of the French-speaking population, you really limit your candidates.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jeff Gordon doesn't speak French. This management structure will be different. Mm-hmm. It includes and respects, as it should, their heritage. The majority of people that speak French as a first language, it respects that. Mm-hmm. Now you're going to open up this, I keep calling it a new structure, but it's going to be about what they're going to put together. And I think it's going to be inclusive. It's going to be different.
Yeah.
The Canadians got 7 wins. It's time for something different.
No question. Different and new. What isn't different and is getting old for Oilers fans is the play of this team, right? And Kenny Holland is in the U.S., pro scouting meetings there. Probably having some tough conversations with that group, maybe with his owner, Daryl Cates. Bob Nichols, in the meantime, has had his hip replaced, which isn't funny, but he's going through a tough time medically right now. So the Oilers front office is all over the place right now. But the team just cannot get on its feet. It just cannot. And, we in the media, not saying you, but generally we look at it and say, well, you know what? Their goaltending is just not good enough. And they haven't been able to rectify that situation. Yep. I don't disagree. But Kenny doesn't have a magic wand. How do you fix that? How do you fix that? If he said he's not going to give away he doesn't want to trade away his first round pick. He doesn't want to trade away top prospects. How do you acquire goaltenders that are going to make a difference? Right?
Well, you can't unless you do. I mean, the only way you can is free agency, and well, that's in the summer. Yeah. And then you're getting into a cap deal, and like you're in a tough way. But when I watch the Oilers, so I'm watching them the other night. It's 3-1 against Ottawa. That game's got to be over.
Yeah.
And we can talk about the goaltending of Stuart Skinner in that game. And, should he have stopped a couple? Probably. And Evan Bouchard looked like a 21-year-old defenseman, man, in that third period. That poor kid was in the video for everything. None of it positive. Mm-hmm. He had a terrible period, but he's a really good prospect. So I'm watching that, and I'm trying to decide what the Oilers' identity is. What are they? Because I look at Connor McDavid and I see Leon Draisaitl, and I know what they are. But they're not hard to play against. And you don't have to run people out of the building, but you have to deny them ice. You have to make it hard to come through the ice to your end. The Oilers don't do a good enough job of that. So if you're Devon Shore or Ryan McLeod or Zach Kassian or Brendan Perlini or anybody else playing in that bottom six, you got to run into somebody. You got to make it hard. And if it's not going to be made hard, then they have to replace those pieces. Those pieces can be replaced much more easily than the top end of your roster. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to say something that I assume won't go over super well, but I'm watching Connor McDavid in his interview after the game, and he looks just defeated. Like he's got the weight of the world on him. You can see it.
Yeah.
In my opinion, he needs to go into that press conference and perk himself up. It sucks. I get it, man. I've been on bad teams before. I've never had his pressure. I would never know it. But go there and say, yeah, game's 3-1. You know what? I need to make a play somewhere in that third period to make it 4-1. Even if you don't believe it, turn it on to yourself, because you can do that. Other players can say it, but they can't do that. Leon Draisaitl had no energy in that game. Those guys are too valuable. They're the best players in the league. Turn it on yourself. Say, we can change this. Even if you don't believe it, you let everybody else relax. If you let everybody else relax a little bit, maybe they play 5 or 10% better. Because they can't relax. Right now, they realize they can read 1 goal in 26 games or whatever. They realize they're struggling. Find a way to ease their pressure. There is no more pressure for Draisaitl and McDavid. They've got it all. Just go out there, perk up your energy, bring a positivity to it. Dave Tippett behind the bench, he's got to bring a different energy. I know it's not like Tip's not a vocal guy. I've known him, played with him in Hartford in 1985 when we started together. Like, come out and have a positive, it sounds new agey, but have a positive approach to it. Like, you can't change what's happened, but attack something with a little bit of energy. You'll be surprised how far it goes. Because right now their energy is something bad's going to happen. Mm-hmm. I don't know where, I don't know when, but it's going to happen. And McDavid and Draisaitl can change that with their energy. They can help the other guys just by saying, hey, I can do this. It doesn't even have to be true, but it matters.
It does, no doubt. Chris Ponger's jersey number 44 lifted into the rafters in St. Louis. I'm watching it, and I had a smile on my face pretty much the entire time, even as Prongs and his family are walking out there, because we know how an enormous human being, how big he is, but his sons are right up there with him now, if not taller. Like, it is just, it's like a family of giants walking out to center ice. And then one of the first things he does is crack a beer and the building just erupts, right? Like, this. I mean, you watched it, you battled against it, you had to deal with it. An absolute beast, fierce, dirty, nasty bit of business on the ice, right? But is there a more liked player or teammate potentially than Chris Pronger? Because away from the rink, he's hilarious.
I played there at the last couple of months of my career. I'm 37. And I don't know how old Prongs was then, but he intimidated me. Like, just his presence. He was like a scowling, mean player. Not in the room. He was, if you couldn't deal with sarcasm, you're up the wrong tree here. Right? One of the first, he would never remember this, but one of my first practices, I don't know the drill. Somehow I'm at the front of the line. What the hell am I doing there? And I'm supposed to pass him the puck, and I pass it in his feet, and he's like, put it on my stick. I'm 37. Buddy, I've passed the puck 50,000 times. I know what goes on your stick. And my first thought was, screw you.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure he didn't even notice, or it was just part of his day, right? Like, it didn't even matter. He was so good. He was so dominant. He was so mean to play against, but he was also so good. I don't know too many players that could make a breakout pass like Chris Pronger. Like right place, right time, on the tape, giving you room to do something with it. And there's one other thing I always thought about Prongs. It's like he played the entire game, his entire career, with a wink. Like, he was like, he got the absurdity of it all. He got the sarcasm of it all. He got the competitiveness of it all. And he was so good. He was like, yeah, I'm just going to do it this way. Like, who was going to change it? He was an amazing player. And of course, his jersey belongs up in the rafters. I mean, like, what an amazing player. And
our
funny.
Interviews,
you are right. Funny.
Yeah, he's a funny
guy.
Yeah. Our interviews on Ray Dregs brought to you by our good friends at Canadian Club Whiskey, who are asking, are you over beer? Why not try a refreshing CC ginger ale with lime next time you are having a drink or watching a game? All right, the president of the Los Angeles Kings, Luc Robitaille, joining us this week, this episode 17 of the Ray Dregs Hockey Podcast. And, well, let's start with the real stuff, the hockey stuff, and then I'll let Ray jump in and you guys can go down memory lane, because that's going to take us
after.
It's going to take us completely off the rails. So aside from getting stung by a 5-goal performance by Timo Meier of the San Jose Sharks, I mean, for the most part, Luke, I think you got to like the way your club, the LA Kings, have played. Are you where you thought you'd be at this point of the regular season, or somewhere in between?
We always said when we started the year and when we made some moves last summer, I mean, I go back to Blakey meeting with Drew Doughty, Kopitar, Quick, Brown, and saying, okay, we're going the other way now. We're going to start acquiring guys to help us. Mm-hmm. And the goal is to be competing for the playoffs. And then, the last month is the last month and see what happens. And, because if you're going to go through the pain of a rebuild and having all these young guys, the way they're going to really learn is that last month and when you get into playoffs, because the game is totally different at that time. So, this is where we expected to be. And, and to answer your question about our team, I really like the way we're playing. We've been, Nelson Emerson mentioned the other day, we've been drafting for 3-4 years, guys that we focus on character, speed, energy. And if you watch us play, that's the way we play. We play with energy. We chase the puck. We put pressure on the other team. And it's a lot of fun to see the amount of work. Even yesterday, I mean, Timo Meier had an unbelievable game. I mean, I think we gave up, I think it was like 10 shots, 5 goals, and he had 8 of those shots in the first 2 periods. Besides that, we were totally outplayed them. We just weren't outplaying one guy.
Did you ever have 5 goals in a game?
No, that was amazing, huh?
Unreal. So you must have had 4 somewhere, right?
Yeah, in the queue. A few times, yeah.
Oh, in the queue, he was scoring goals. That wasn't even.
In the queue, the only time we saw the goalies at the beginning of each period.
Hey, when did you get here?
I'll see you later.
So, Luc, you mentioned Nelson Emerson talking about drafting for 3 or 4 years, and you acquire all those picks because you got to rebuild, and the only way to rebuild is to end up with with a bunch of picks. Now you draft, you collect, you get skill, you get speed, you get energy. How do you know that, okay, we think we've got enough, now we've got to change and start acquiring players to take the next step?
I think we looked at it, Ray, like we started having we started sprinkling a few kids last year, and we saw like the way they were performing. And then at the same time, Adrian Kempe is only 25 years old, and right. We're aware of that. And some of the kids they're still like coming up. And we felt the way we played last year, the way our team was playing, it was time to kind of turn it. And it gets to a point too. You have so many prospects, you can't play them all. So you got to turn the page. And we really felt last year the way we played, even though it wasn't the season we wanted and so forth. And guys started playing the system better and understanding, watching our farm team and seeing the growth of some of those kids and anticipating that some of them might take a few more months and so forth to come up. So it's kind of like the way we looked at it.
Now you mentioned Adrian Kempe, who's deservedly going to the All-Star game. What a fantastic year he's had. Talk a little bit about the development, because he was a winger, then he was a center, then he was a winger, and now he just looks like wherever he is on the ice, most times is the most dangerous place.
Yeah. He's a funny player. Like, I think he's always played the game the last few years where it's almost like he played the total opposite of you and I. He was always playing defensive first. Oh. So when I would see him go in the offensive zone, Ray, you would understand that. He would get in the zone, and next thing you know, he was a third defenseman on the blue line. He was literally, I've never seen a guy stand on the blue line with our D. It was really frustrating to see him because you feel he's got so much potential. And then suddenly this year, we put him whether with Deneau or Kopitar, and he seems to understand that he was going to be able to take more chances, and he just took it. He just he's the first guy on the forecheck now. Like he's still a very good player defensively, but most of the time he's the first one down in the offensive zone, and I think that's been the biggest difference in his game is he's willing to take more chances.
Now, do you see your fans, your fan base? Are they excited about your kids? There's him. There's Sean Durgy. Byfield's now back playing after a fractured ankle. Are they excited about these kids?
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement. Like our core fans really understand. You played here, so you know our core fans, how passionate they are. And so they understand. You keep reading. Every time we lose one, they're asking for the next kid to come up. But it's been fun, I think, for them to even see this weekend, Fagemo and now Turcotte. We're sprinkling those kids. They're starting to come up and they're coming in and playing the way we expect them to play. Which is the same way. Like it feels like right now, whenever a new guy's coming into the lineup, and I give credit to both of our coaching staffs, they never miss a beat. They all play the same way.
Last night in St. Louis, Sean Pronger had his number retired. Or Sean Pronger. Sean's not going to get his number.
Oh my God! Not Sean.
No chance. His big brother Chris got his number retired, deservedly so. Your number's retired in LA. Do you ever go into the rink still and look up at the end wall and see your number there and just go, man, that's kind of cool that my number's retired?
Not really, but I did use it once. Ray. We were hosting the draft in LA, and this kid that was an usher saw me go up in the stands. And if you don't have your badge, you can't go back on the ice. And we were hosting the draft, and the kid wouldn't let me back on. I just wanted to say hello to Tony Granado, and he wouldn't let me get back on the ice. And I just got super frustrated. I'm like, come on, we're throwing the event. Like, it's us, the Kings. And the kid's like, well, if you don't have an idea. So finally I said, you want my idea? My effing idea. There it is. I pointed right at my banner. That's the only time I've ever used it.
Now you're not the only guy that's worn number 20 there. Oh, you just took it from people. Bit of a
drawback for a little bit.
So I sign with the Rangers. I'm a free agent. I sign with the Rangers. Neil Smith tells me, oh, we're so excited to have number 20, not with the Islanders, but with the Rangers. I'm so pumped, right? I signed whatever. 2 weeks later, they make a trade for Luke and old Samuelson from Pittsburgh. Neil calls me up. He's like, yeah, hey, you know that number 20? Yeah, you can't have it. Luke gets it. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, yeah, Luke always wears number 20. I go, okay, I'll take number 26. He goes, yeah, Joey Kosher wears that one. I go, well, what number do you have? He goes, well, I think 21's open. So that's how I got number 21. So I get traded to LA. Luke's already taken the number once from me. So I get traded to LA, and Luke gets traded back to LA. Oh, the people are so happy. Our favorite boy, Luke, is coming back. I don't say anything about the number. He doesn't say anything about the number. We're riding the bike before camp, and he goes, hey, little guy, which is, of course, what he said. Little guy, what are we going to do about the number? And I'm like, oh, nothing. And he's like, well, So he ends up, we make a trade, a week's vacation in Hawaii with the hotel for the number 20. That's the trade.
Wow.
I come to realize Luke knew everybody over there. That thing didn't cost him anything.
That is not true. That is not true. That is not true. Nothing is free in Hawaii. Nothing is free in Hawaii. That is not the truth.
So every time, now I get a hockey card now, though, and I see Luke, I see a card with me as number 20 in the Kings, and I'm like, what was I thinking? Like,
so you weren't really asking me about the banner, how to just being like just really wanting to know as a fan. You just wanted to bring that up, correct?
Exactly. That's exactly why he did it.
Work around, Luke. I had to get to you twice, taking my number away. It was just devastating.
In my defense, though, I didn't know in New York. I did not know. In my defense.
Would you have been willing to take a different number, Luke?
I got to tell you, Darren, I've never had more fun as playing with Ray on his line. God, did we laugh. Like him and I, we would try everything we could do to chip it out, do everything right. And Alex Kovalev was on the other side, just floating all over the place. And both of us would get benched, and Kovalev would end up playing with Mess the next shift when things were bad.
we were sitting there, and we'd get a power play, and Mess would put his leg up on the boards and turn around to Coley Campbell, the coach, and say, hey, Coley, who's up? So Luke and I would just sit down, and it's not us. And out they'd go again. We played together for a bit, and in New York, and then I got traded. We come to LA, and Luke, honestly, I was amazed to see like how much you were loved in LA. Like the people just couldn't wait to get back. Could you even imagine that? Like your 7th round draft pick, Tom Glavine's a baseball pitcher. They drafted him in front of you. And you're this figure in LA it's 35 years. It's amazing.
Yeah, you know what it is? I think people that are the Kings fans and the hockey fans here, they kind of feel like they grew up with me. Now I meet all the grandparents. Now they constantly talk to me. But I think they feel like they grew up. Like they knew I was there right before Wayne. And during the Wayne era, it was so big. It was so big. But even though we had Wayne and Larry Robinson and John Tonelli, Kelly Rudy at the time, I was the kid. With all those veterans for the first 3-4 years. So it kind of, I think a lot of people feel it's like they grew up learning hockey with me being the kid, at the time. But I'll tell you what, Darren, every time I would score a goal, all I remember is Ray come in and laughing, just, I don't get it, how you do it. He would literally tell me on the ice, I'd be on one leg on my back, and I just don't get it. He wasn't good for my confidence. He would just laugh every time I would score a goal.
Why couldn't that happen to me?
So you look over there. Here's Alex Kovalev. He's beautiful skater, strong. He's deking out the same defenseman 3 times. Luke falls down twice, stumbles over here, collides with a guy here, pucks here, bam, it's in the net. Alex is still stick handling in the corner. And Luke's got another one. And it was, I got to tell you, so I was so meticulous with my sticks, right? The tape had to be perfect. We had wooden blades back then. Luke would come in, his stick literally would be on fire because he'd putting more curve on it. He'd jam it in an ice bucket to put the fire out, and then he'd tape it, and there'd be big gaps in the tape. And I go, Luke, I asked him one time, how could you have those gaps in the tape? He goes, it's a big puck. He just, Luke could fall out of bed and score. You must have always been a scorer, right? Like when you were a kid too?
It was funny, like growing up, especially like when I think I was like 12, 13 years old, like I remember seeing Gretzky the first time. And from then on, like I tried to be like a playmaker. Like I just wanted to move the puck and everything. I really learned to score goals. I mean, it was, like you said, it was in the Quebec League, so scoring 50 goals in that league wasn't a big deal. The year before, Mario had 130 or 140, so you weren't even considered a goal scorer. So I got 50 in junior my second year, but I really took pride in being a playmaker, and I really learned to shoot pucks and to get open on the ice. My 3rd year in junior, I played with this guy. His name was Guy Rouleau, who was probably the best pure goal scorer I've ever played with, including like guys that could shoot like Yari Curry, picking a corner. But he would teach me how, after every practice, to take one-timers and so forth. Like that year, I got like 130 assists playing with that guy. He got like 90 goals. Like I still got like 60, but it was him that taught me how to get open. And then when I came into pro, my first year, I played with Marcel Dion, and I tried to do like a nice saucer pass on the 2-on-1. I'll never forget. Marcel says, listen, kid, just give it to me and go to net. I'll find you and I'll get to it. I said, okay, whatever you want me to do, Mr. Dion. And that's how it started. The thing about me in front of the net, like to tell you like how I was in junior, I was like the half wall guy. So like my first couple of years, I was a half wall playing with Jimmy Carson. And then we got Gretzky. So Robbie Fedoruk would make me take Gretz for the power play. So I never played the power play my first year. Then the second year, we switched coach. We got Tom Webster, and we're 2 games into the season. And again, I'm taking Wayne on the power play. So Rogie Vachon calls me up, and I think maybe it was 5-6 games of the year. And he says, it's hard. I understand you take Gretz on the change and you don't really get on the power play. He goes, it's hard. You're on the half wall. He goes, it's too bad you never played the front of the net, because he says, we're looking for a guy. I go, really? I go, I played the front of the net my whole junior career. And he goes, you did? I go, yeah. And I just totally lied. I'd never been there my entire career. And then the very next day in practice, Tom Webster come to me. Webby goes, so you played the front of the net? I go, yeah, I played my whole career in junior. He goes, okay, we're going to try you there. And that was it. The rest of my career, I played the front of the net on the power play. but it was really because I didn't want to take Wayne on the change. I didn't care where I was going to go. I wanted to get on that first unit.
Do you know what's so funny about that, Luke? And I'm not even making this up. So we get to LA. You know how they say, oh, things even out over a game or a season? Yeah. Things even out over a career. So Luke didn't want to follow Gretz on the power play. When we were in LA, they would say, Luke's group would be on the power play and they'd say, okay, here are the next guys up. We'd race not to get Luke. Because he'd never come off the ice. He'd always, they'd shoot the puck down the ice and they would change. And Luke would go stand on the far side from the bench.
But that was the system. That was the system, though. Andy Murray made me cross the blue line. That was the system.
So he'd go, oh, I was on the other side. I didn't know we were changing. He's up there with 4 other guys, but he didn't change. Oh, that's so good, Luke.
That is funny, yeah.
You're a huge fan of the game, Luke. Always have been. When you watch now, do you like the way the game is played? We're seeing more offense this season. I'm not entirely sure why, but we're going back now to the 80s and the 90s. But do you like how the game is called? Do you like the video reviews? Do you like all of the other stuff that we're seeing as part of it?
I love the game. You watch some of those kids, what they can do with the puck now. Just watching the warm-ups, what these kids can do in the warm-ups or morning skates, it's like we never even thought of trying that. And then to see them trying in games and coming across, no matter what, like that Zegras play, what he did with that kid, it was unbelievable. None of us would have had the guts to try it. I think it's awesome for the game. I think it's but the way these kids, it's a treat to watch McDavid. I know his team's struggling, but you get to watch him, or you watch McKinnon or Matthews. These players are very, very special, and it's the same for us. Like I watched yesterday. I was watching Byfield in the American League, and they're special, these kids, and I think it's great for the game. Do I want to make sure like we call the game? I'm not sure I call it tighter. I want to make sure the game is called the same way in April and May as it is in October. And then I do think like if you are a good player, you should get the same space in the playoffs. And then it comes down to the system and the way the team plays. But if you're not allowed to hook or slash in the hands in October and November, you shouldn't be allowed to do it in May.
Yeah.
And that's probably the fairness on the way you build your team, because right now you don't want to have to build 2 type of teams, one to make the playoffs and one to win the playoffs.
Last question for me, Luke. One of my favorite things as your teammate is, 35 years you've been in or so in the States. Your English is finally getting better, which is really, really quite something. Do you still do the Axl Rose Paradise City, or is that all gone?
Every once in a while. It's been a little while. During COVID, we haven't had as many get together with people. As you know, my threshold is about 2 beers, so I need to get to 4. Or 2 glasses of wine is probably my threshold. If I get to the 3rd glass of wine, it could happen, but it's pretty rare. I
got to tell you, Paradise City with Luc Robitaille is something people should hear.
And I only know like 3 lyrics.
Well, hey, Ray, we have to have an evening version of recording the Ray and Dregs podcast. The next time we have Luke in. Hey, we'll splash some Canadian Club whiskey into him and we'll really get him riled up.
I think it can be. Luke, I got to tell you, it's awesome to see you. I'm actually going to see you Thursday. I'm in there for the Kings in Colorado, 2 of the hottest teams in the league. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing you, buddy.
Okay, great seeing you guys.
Be well, Luke. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Aaron. Thanks, Ray. Okay, bye, guys. Bye.
Oh boy, this is an easy one. Easy to raise a glass of 43-year-old Sweet Nectar Canadian Club. To Luc Robitaille, Ray, for joining us today, presented by our friends at Canadian Club Whiskey. And we've had so many good alumni guests, and that was the theme in our off season. I'm sure we'll do it again. We always talk about, man, we got to get more of those guys on the podcast because 20 minutes flies by, right? With the storytelling and just the willingness to divulge stuff that maybe wasn't as funny back then, but now it's just hilarious.
Well, I mean, just think of him telling a coach, "Oh yeah, I play in front of the net all the time," and he's never done it. Then he goes on to a Hall of Fame career, or not wanting to follow Gretz on the power play because Gretz stayed out the full 2 minutes. And then 15 years later, Luc was the same thing. Nobody wanted to follow him. He never came off the ice. I got to tell you though, like I've been friends with Luc for a long time.
Yeah.
His energy is infectious. He is such a positive person. When you're around him, you feel uplifted. Mm-hmm. The thing that gets lost in that, Dregs, was he was one hell of a competitor.
Oof.
Like, man, did he work off the ice, how hard he worked as he got older because he didn't want to give in.
Yeah.
And then he got himself back into some strength and some health. Yeah. And he had a couple of really good years after he came back to LA after he'd been in Detroit and won the Stanley Cup. And then, like he could score, he was a leader. His desire to just get the hell beat out of him to score, man, you don't just make that up. I mean, I think probably that gets lost a little bit in looking at Luc's career in general. He was tough.
But it explains, doesn't why he was so prolific on that left wing. Coming out of junior, drafted a late round pick in the National Hockey League. His skating was a question. There were so many big question marks beside the name of Luc Robitaille. Yet you check out Luc Robitaille, Hockey DB, you look at everything that was accomplished in a Hall of Fame career, and you're like, how did he do it? Well,
Dregs, when he started, we're certainly wasn't the day of now where you see highlights all the time. And
yeah,
I remember going out to LA to play, and there was these two rookies, Jimmy Carson and Luc Robitaille. I didn't know anything about either of them, except Jimmy Carson was drafted third in the draft, so I'd heard of him. And Luc, you're like, well, who's this guy? And you watch him for the first three shifts, and you're like, oh my God, he can't skate, he can't get anywhere. And then by the end of the second period, he's got 2 goals.
All he does is
score. He did it all the time. And even how about, so we all had our idiosyncrasies, and I forgot about the one that he'd tape his stick white in the first period, black in the second, and white in the third. Well, who the hell does that? And he's, I don't know, he's just, I'm so happy we got him on. And I hope everybody enjoyed listening to him because he's a phenomenal guy.
Yeah, and you can check out Ray Dregs' social channels for Rapid Fire, presented by Kintec Footwear and Orthotics, keeping you active on your feet. A little later this week, we'll have Rapid Fire on the way with Luc Robitaille. By the way, huge welcome aboard, Ray, to our new sponsor, our friends at Kintec Footwear and Orthotics. Yeah. Welcome to the Ray Dregs Hockey Podcast. And so I was in Vancouver. We were doing some promo work in the fall, and Kintec was one of the stores that we visited, right?
Right.
Had a wonderful experience there, properly fitted for footwear. I love my orthotics and the shoes provided by Kintec. But what was amusing to me and enlightening to you is the fact that you've been wearing the wrong size shoes basically your adult life. Fair?
Yep. Yeah, by a size. So Kristen was our technician, and she says, what size shoe do you wear? I said 9. And she says, okay, so you get on this device that 3D images your foot. She goes, yeah, your right foot's a 9.5 and your left foot's a 10. I'm like, I'm 57. I know what size my shoes are. Apparently I don't.
And now you've been wearing the proper sized.
Oh, way more comfortable. My toes don't hurt. No. Toes don't hurt. Who knew?
No, who knew? Thank you, Kintec.
Thanks, Kintec.
All right, Chris Abbott from Coolbet.co dropping by, episode 17 of the Ray Dregs Hockey Podcast. And I think it's fair, Chris, to call it a wild weekend of football. I mean, it was wild card weekend in the National Football League. I made a few bucks off a couple of buddies who are Dallas Cowboys fans. They're still crying. I haven't been paid yet. That's another story. But when you look at from a gambling perspective here, this did not go the way that the bookmakers were hoping. Fair?
It's a long game if you're in the sports betting operator business. It's a long game. You let them win one weekend and try and grab it back on the next. But yeah, for people gambling this weekend, all the favorites won and covered except for Dallas. And, a lot of people were on San Francisco already in that game. So, it was a good weekend if you were at all educated. Even if you weren't educated, you just bet all the favorites. You had a pretty good weekend. So, it's good to have those every once in a while because as someone who bets the NFL a lot, I know it doesn't happen very often. So every now and again, you got to get one for the good guys.
Yeah, the biggest problem with it was we all had to watch the games because they mostly stunk.
Well, it's funny. People like to rag on me a little bit when I watch Red Zone during the regular season as opposed to watching the games individually. Standalone sometimes, and we saw it this weekend, if it's a standalone game and it's not a good one, it can be a long, hard viewing experience. And, some of the referees got a little more camera time than we would have liked. And it wasn't, it's funny though with that league because no matter what the optics are, no matter what the public outcry is during the week, everyone's back next Sunday. They've really got something going on there.
Well, I got two things. One, I thought Kyler Murray looked like a shortstop yesterday and drafted in the first round by the Oakland A's. And secondly was the crazy ending to the Dallas game. And as many Dallas fans are sour at the official, the rule is he's got to touch the ball. And it's not like they hired a 100-yard dash specialist. I mean, the guy got there as fast as he could. He's chugging his way up the field.
Well, there was a collision. I mean,
what a tough way to go down, eh?
If you take 14 penalties or whatever Dallas took pre-snap, and then you decide to run the ball with no timeouts, that's on you. That is not on anybody else. That is completely on you. And I mean, everyone's in the excuse-making business, but it seemed that the only person that even a little bit put their big boy pants on in the Cowboys organization was the owner. Yeah, the coach and the quarterback all complaining, and it wasn't a good look for them. I'm sure frustration is at an all-time high. They are the team, people like to rag on the Maple Leafs in the playoffs. The Dallas Cowboys are that in football.
Your guy Sean McVay's through.
Yeah. The only mistake about betting against him this week was the other coach was Cliff Kingsbury. And, I agree with you though, Ray. Like Kyler Murray looked like the moment was too big for him. And I was a big Kyler Murray guy. Loved him at Oklahoma. Loved him. He's such a special talent. But, man, his passes last night, and I know he was rushed an awful lot, but a lot of them weren't even close. Like they were never in that football game. And it was, it was a hard one to watch if you had money on Arizona.
Well, I would say, as we kind of just become just observers here, is that's the trick with a young player is that there's going to be a time when he's going to run face first into the wall. And that doesn't mean you go, he's no good. Yeah. That means like, how does he respond and how can the team help him into next year? Because that looked like a lot for him yesterday. LA looked like they had 50 guys rushing him all the time.
So then the question from a betting perspective automatically has to become LA is now overvalued against Tom Brady next week. So let's see what happens, see if the money moves towards Tampa Bay or not. Because I agree, the Rams looked unbeatable last night, but I saw a really good tweet that said maybe the Cowboys' loss to the Cardinals said a lot more about the Cowboys than it did the Cardinals. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a good point.
Speaking of unbeatable, as we shift back to the National Hockey League here, we just continue to watch the Florida Panthers roll around. And there's some very good teams in the National Hockey League. Tampa Bay's up there, Colorado. Go down the list of every division. But is it the Florida Panthers as safe a bet right now as there is?
Man, they're scoring 5, 6, 9 goals a game.
Ridiculous.
It's unbelievable. It's impressive, but I just don't know what to think. And anyway, I know we're recording this, and this will probably be the ultimate mush, but they go into Calgary paying, plus money in regulation to win. And how do you not bet it? Calgary's got 2 wins in their last 10, and they're against Seattle and Chicago. And you're like, okay, well, this is the perfect spot for Florida. So when people are listening to this, I'm sure they're probably laughing at me right now going, that's exactly how you bet an underdog, and Calgary probably won that game. But they're unbelievable. And I think you just gotta ride with it. Like we knew they were going to be good coming into the season. They lose their head coach. Oh yeah, what's going to happen now? But it's funny. I talked to Gerard Gallant a number of years ago when he was there, and he was talking about the young guys that they had and that they didn't get the spotlight because they were playing in Florida. And now people are acting surprised, but they always had the talent, and they're really kind of maturing there now.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it wouldn't be much fun to play those guys. Your plus minus takes an absolute beating against them.
All right, Kris, thanks for doing this, buddy. We'll check in episode 18.
All right, my pleasure, guys. Talk to you soon.
See you, Kris.
Ask Ray and Dregs anything. Every week we ask you to fire your questions our way on Twitter, Instagram, @Ray and Dregs, or on the website, rayandregs.com. From JB 1988, Ray, does John Klingberg to Toronto make sense to you if the money works? I mean, you basically have to say that with all cap scrap teams. Mobile, right shot, maybe a guy who can fit with Jake Muzzin, who's been struggling of late, or where do you see John Klingberg going?
Well, I mean, John Klingberg makes sense in a lot of places. I don't know where the Leafs would find $5 million of cap space.
Yeah.
I think he might not be quite 5 million. I think he might be 4.8. Somehow I have that in my head. But if Dallas gets further down this road with Klingberg, there's going to be there'll be a lot of teams that will look at him. That'll drive the price.
Mm-hmm.
That'll drive the return for Dallas. Yeah, I do think he's a good fit in Toronto. I just that one just unless there's that much money going out. And I think pretty much it's going to have to be like that for anybody.
Yeah, agreed. All right, to Twitter from Matthew Beardsley. And you talked about the Oilers and how they can be, I don't know if the word is soft to play against, but maybe not as determined as they need to be. So Matthew Beardsley is asking, okay, define easy to play against. And as a player, Ray, could you tell when an opponent didn't want to pay the price, so to speak?
Okay, so being easy to play against is whenever you move the puck, nobody runs into you. Nobody denies you space on the ice. So as you're skating into the neutral zone and into the offensive zone, there's nobody in your way. There's nobody that makes you adjust. There's nobody that bumps into you. It's just free ice. Man, you can play like that forever. It's easy to play like that. And the reason you know that is because when you're playing against someone and it's not, you're like, man, I am fighting for ice everywhere. Like the New Jersey Devils, we talk all the time about those mid-90s teams in the trap. The problem with playing the Devils is it was hard. Mm-hmm. There was nowhere to go. There was always someone to bump into you. Not hit you, just bump into you. You didn't get to skate in a straight line. As for playing against guys, yeah, you could tell right away when somebody just wasn't into it that night for whatever reason, tired, hurt, whatever. And there are certain guys that are just easier to play against than others. They would never stick their nose over the puck, no matter how talented they were. And so you could play against those guys. You didn't want to get in the skill contest with them, but you could play against those guys.
All right, back to Instagram. We just talked about John Klingberg. And every season leading up to the trade deadline, and heck, even in the offseason, there always seems to be a rush for any available right shot defenseman, right?
Right.
They always seem to be priority because they're a premium. They're somewhat rare. So puck possession, Instagram asking, is the shortage of right shot D-men because fewer people are left-handed? I guess.
Jeez, I mean, that'd be a heck of a study.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, I think it would be. I think there, for years and years and years, we used to joke in the baseball community that if you want your kid to be a major league pitcher, teach him to throw left-handed. Mm-hmm. And he could be a left-handed reliever because teams are always looking for that left-handed matchup guy. Right-handed defensemen are at a premium.
Yeah.
And man, it's plausible, sure. I mean, I'm a left-handed shooter. I'm right-handed dominant, so my right hand's on the top of my stick. And so conversely, it would be the other way, which is where the question comes from. It's a good one. I don't have an answer, but yeah, could be.
All right. Last question to Brooke. wondering what teams or team breaks the ice, hits the trade market first. And I mean, it's impossible to have a defined answer to that, right? We don't know. You can see a team with need, and maybe we revisit the Oilers as a theme on episode 17. And, magically, Kenny's not going to find the goaltender that is going to immensely help their goaltending situation, I don't think. But would that be the team that you'd be keeping close eye on?
Yeah, I would. Who strikes me a little bit is the Rangers. They're good.
Yeah. Been looking for that forward for a while, too.
Yeah, so what if that forward pops up now?
Yeah.
And so you've got a couple of teams that are separating themselves from the pack. They played in Arizona yesterday, Arizona and Montreal. Mm-hmm. Of course, you can say, I want to make a deal quick, but you got to have somebody to trade with. Well, Arizona and Montreal are clearly in the market. Yeah. They're clearly selling. Never sleep on Lou Lamoriello. He likes to make his moves early. But the Rangers, I think they're having a positively surprising year, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if they struck early, if they can find one of those forwards that they're looking for, a top 6 guy.
No, agreed. And I don't know that the Buffalo Sabres, as an example, are going to be the team that strikes early, but you speaking of defensemen in this podcast, you think of Colin Miller. He's going to be available. Gritty veteran forward, Cody Eakin. Again, there's another piece available. So it's a little early. Tiny, by the way, is going to serenade us out of episode 17.
Way to go, Tiny.
How's Ollie feeling, by the way?
Ollie's surgery. Well. Yeah, Ollie's looking at life a little differently these days.
I'll bet.
And, he's very clingy, I would say.
Yeah.
Very clingy.
It's a bit of a traumatic experience.
Yes, but he's doing good. He's basically chewing everything in the house. So he's getting close to normal.
We back traveling yet? I mean, you might be for ESPN.
I'm going to LA tomorrow.
Nice.
Have Colorado, Los Angeles on Thursday in LA. Yeah. TSN, we are not traveling to the States. So our next Toronto Maple Leaf game is the 1st. Leafs are in Jersey. We'll do that off remote. And then we've got one game to make up on our schedule, Leaf broadcast. They got canceled in Calgary. And so sometime in February, that game will get made up.
Yeah, man. That, we'll touch on that in episode 18, just the craziness of the scheduling, right? I mean, schedules are going to come out in the next day or two. Some teams have what they believe is a schedule, but they've been warned by the NHL. More changes are coming. So I'm going to want your opinion on that, because I look at a team like Ottawa that has 12, 13 rescheduled games.
I mean, I don't know how they're going to do it. And there's no right way to do it. No. Right? Like, how do you space the games out? Like, if it, so you say about 12 Dregs for them?
Yeah, 12 or 13. I think it's 12. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, so you need plus 20 days to get those in. And that's a hellacious schedule if they gave them 12 games in 20 days. Yeah. But they're not going to get 12 games in 30 days. There's no time.
No, and ongoing restrictions in the provinces, right? With COVID and whatnot. And the NHL has tried to do its best to push back as many days and games as they can, so that you can perhaps get some level of capacity in the 7 Canadian buildings. So anyway, that's for another podcast, another day.
We'll fire that up next week for sure.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the vaccination changes with the protocols in the NHL and the PA as introduced early this week as well. So you have a good week, my friend.
You too. Go out there and shovel again. I'm sure somebody could use your expertise.
Yeah, snow in the forecast for Wednesday. So shoveled 3 times, twice with a blower. Once this morning being Tuesday, that's 3. So I've got a couple more ahead of me.
How's Mason's shoveling skills?
Well, he's gone back to university. He's in Guelph, so I hope they're good. Otherwise, he's not getting out. Yeah,
good timing for him.
All right, buddy. Huge shout out to our partners who make the podcast possible. That's Coolbet.co, the free-to-play sports and casino games website. By our friends at Canadian Club Whiskey, who always ask, are you over beer? By Andy.ca, remember, use code RD75 and you will save $75 on a mattress. by Kintec Footwear and Orthotics. Book a consultation at kintec.net, and by Boston Pizza. Pick it up, get it delivered, doesn't matter. Let Boston Pizza do the cooking tonight, and you will not be disappointed. And a special thank you to all of you for listening, for rating, for sharing, for following the podcast wherever you do that. Thank you, as always. And for following us on YouTube, where you can catch up on the video versions of past Ray and Dregs interviews, podcasts, and the very popular Rapid Fire. Thank you, everybody. That's episode 17. Until next time, episode 18. Stay warm, stay safe, and stay well.